Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be moderating this panel. It's a subject that I'm extremely passionate about in light of the study that we're due to release in a moment. And before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to quickly set a bit of context around the really exciting focus of this. So I think we all understand that innovation is key for our futures in terms of prosperity, economic growth. We see it all around the world, right? That's the name of the game. And startups are very much at the heart of that, right? But it's really, really hard to start a startup or to scale a startup. And, you are burning cash. The late nights, it is a burn. And it's the most important thing, and I think why District is such an interesting and huge opportunity here for the UAE and the world, is that it takes a village to raise a child, as they say. And I think nothing more important than that in the tech space. It takes accelerators and incubators to bring people like mentors, corporations, government entities, regulators, and the whole wider investor ecosystem to support startups. So I'm looking forward to having a really interesting discussion with our peers that were leading this incredible study led by UBI. So I'll be introducing to the stage exceptional accelerator and incubator designers and deliverers from. So first off, Abdullah Snobar, Executive Director at DMZ from Canada. If you'd like to join us. Maybe all four can join. So come. I'll be calling you out. So Abdullah, please come. And then we have Simon Bond, Executive Director from Set Squared from the UK. Keep going. There we go. Let's get the energy going. Exactly. Then we have Marika Pakala, Head of Aalto University Startup Center, Finland. Oh, there we go. Okay, and Zamir Sukur, thank you very much. CEO and partner of Global Ventures Alliance from Russia. Fantastic. Great. So let's get it kicking off. And I'll briefly introduce myself, actually. I didn't even say. So my name is Babak. I'm Managing Director for Plug and Play Middle East and Abu Dhabi. Alhamdulillah, we're one of the largest accelerators in the world. We run 80 programs around the world across our 42 offices. And in the Middle East, we've been operational for 4 years across 5 cities, running 9 accelerators currently, 3 in Abu Dhabi. Basically, let's kick things off. So first off, it would be great to, let's say, discuss broadly the importance and significance of this study, especially today in light of the COVID and all the pivots that all of us as accelerator providers had to do. So maybe I'd like to go turn by turn to hear, number one, quickly for you to tell us a bit about how you were involved in the study and what was the experience like being involved in the study? Did you learn some new things? How did it go? So over to you, sir, first.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. As always, we really like what UBI Global is doing. And for the last year, we've been in a very close contact with our partners in District 2020 in this amazing site. I didn't have a chance to walk around. I just arrived this morning, but I definitely will look at everything you guys built here. I've heard a lot of great feedback. Now, coming back to this study, for me, it was important that there was a shift in the study towards ESG and DEI, because we in GVA for the last couple of years started focusing towards not just helping startups, create new businesses, but actually looking into what kind of impact these startups are having. Are they solving, some real social issues? Are they covering, masses of people who are struggling from whatever problem they have? So, one of the strategic goals that we had as an organization is actually trying to work towards startups that actually tackle these problems and can be born in Russia or can be born in any other place, but could potentially be, global because they solve such a big issue. So I was very pleased and interested to participate in the study. We actually, filled out the forms, and then we had a big interview. As I mentioned during the break to one of our colleagues here, because we run so fast, we do all these programs, we don't have enough time to go back and analyze. And only the questions from UBI, made me actually sit down with my team and say, oh, we've done this, we helped these guys and we talked to these guys. So then you see the whole picture only when you have a chance to sit down and actually look back at everything you did. So I would say for me, it was actually an opening to realize that we did shift our focus towards impact and startups that work in that direction.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting you said that, because people sometimes forget that accelerators, they themselves move crazy fast. And we've had to change a lot. And I think it takes sometimes a study or someone asking you a question that you reflect like, wow, so much has changed, but still business grows, right? Marika, a brief question. So I'd love to know a little bit about, tell us a bit about your role in your organization. How do you drive, what is your accelerators focus a bit, and maybe a bit about your involvement in the study. It would be great to hear.
All right. Thank you very much. So yeah, I'm representing Art University from Finland, and as we are a university, of course, it's very much in our core business to do research. That's where we are coming from, and helping the deep tech based deep tech companies survive and so on. So that's very important to us. As a startup center, business accelerator, we are doing our own survey as well, and that's very important to us to know how well our startups are doing. And so we have been following them about 17 years already, and that's a very valuable data for us. UPI, of course, we won award in Doha a couple of years ago, and that was a very exciting time for us to get real feedback on where we stand in the world and get to know the other incubators and accelerators in the world. So it was very amazing place to be, and we learned a lot. So when we got a chance to take part in this survey, we were already very excited to know more. Yeah. So involve ourselves as an incubator accelerator in the survey and getting to know what's going on, and probably the same thing as you said, that to stop for a while and think where we are and what we are doing.
Yeah, right. Every answer I'm getting more and more excited about this study. I can't wait to open it. So, that's awesome. I think probably the temperature difference between Finland and here, it must be like minus 20 or something like that.
Yeah,
so
in
anyway,
Finland is.
I hope it's treating you well.
Yeah, good to be here.
So over to you, Abdullah. If you could shed a bit of light at DMZ, a bit of sort of how you've been involved with the project, how's your journey been during COVID? How are you and the team coping?
Sure. Well, first of all, I got to say thanks to UBI for having us. And I never thought I'd have a country colder than us at the current moment, but Finland, I think, takes the cake on that one. So being Canadian and whatnot. In any event...
hey, Russia here.
Wow, I guess to keep
UK looks tropical over there.
I think you represent the coldest countries here.
We're in the balmy UK.
Who really would have thought Canada would be this far along on the sunshine list? It's crazy. But in any event, look, it's an absolute pleasure, and I think there is, on our end, maybe I'll talk about first off the study itself and kind of how DMZ coped with some of these things during the pandemic and whatnot. But when Ali reached out to us and kind of talked about the Triumph kind of piece that he wanted to build on, to me it sounded and looked like a lot like a resilience study. It was a resilience exercise. How do we start thinking about things and learn from today and build for tomorrow? How do we start taking in insights to ensure that we're being prepared for what's to come and that we're not being surprised the way that we kind of all were surprised by what took place in 2020. Generally speaking, two of the things that we're really tapped into here were ESG and EDI, and I think those are areas that we look at quite deeply. EDI in particular is a huge focus point for the DMZ, and even more so for Canada as a whole country, right? So obviously we're headquartered in Toronto, being the most diverse city in the entire world. Simon, I know there might be a dispute between London and Toronto, but I think Toronto takes this one as well. But in any event, I think there is an intentionality for what we had to do better, do more, and focus on terms of delivery and access to people that maybe didn't have that access pre-COVID and during COVID. So I think that was really one of the biggest insights that we were excited about, to see where are people going to invest their time, their resources, their energy. Are they looking at this in a way that is a partnership with a startup, with an incubator, with an accelerator? Are they looking at this independently? What does it mean? And I think a lot of the insights that Angela kind of spoke about earlier were, I want to say it was overly surprising, but it was nice to see what some of the outcomes were from this. So this is the beginning of obviously what would become hopefully a bigger discussion down the line. Double clicking one step closer into DMZ specifically, we've been quite engaged in EDI activities for the past, call it 10 years since inception for the DMZ. Again, very much part of our ethos, being where we are, being part of a university that's very much community focused, and really trying to drive support and innovation for an underserved community. We started to establish, since 2018, we started to establish programs in particular for Black founders in Canada that are incredibly underrepresented in our country relative to the population. Since 2011, we were running programs for women founders. More presently, we're now trying to run programs for Indigenous populations in the country as well, which I think, I don't have to get into that history within the country. So there's been a focus on the fact that, we've built this incredible ecosystem, this incredible environment of people that have been building. But as you go on that journey, you got to make sure that you're not leaving people behind that can be just as great as the next guy or the next gal beside you. So we, this is kind of the efforts that we've done, and we've seen an incredible amount of support that's come through, not just for DMZ, but across the country. Over the past 12 months, Canada has invested over $1 billion in EDI programs and initiatives across the country, which DMZ has also benefited from quite a bit. But the programming, it's not just for funding, just for people to get grants and whatnot. It's also investment venture capital funds. They've really helped deploy new VCs that actually look like the individuals that want to get that kind of funding. So, people that are leading it happen to be Black Canadians or Indigenous Canadians. And it's been really interesting to see that kind of, that plug. And, this is the beginning of, hopefully, again, of something that we can maybe push across the international stage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as we're sort of celebrating the triumphs of innovation and everything that we've gone through, some things good, some things bad, I think a really important point that you bring is about the societal impact that technology and innovation can do. I was actually moderating a panel at the Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Prosperity Summit, where it was all about the SDGs, etc. One of the most important ones, actually, people often forget, is about equality, diversity, not just like food and ag tech and all those kind of big SDGs, right? So I think things like how accelerators are so critical to support startups and to push, give people equal opportunity is a very good point, right?
Well, I think you raise a really important point. There's one part of it that we have a responsibility to help startups build for these issues and kind of engage their solutions to the community, corporate community. The other part is how do you actually engage really high potential founders that didn't think about this industry as a way to kind of build and grow and scale their business, to think this is the place to go. Why can't you engage? And you should.
Exactly. Yeah. Entrepreneurship is the great sort of leveler. Anyone can do it, right? Especially with technically, right? Yeah. And Simon, from fellow Brit to fellow Brit, in the tropical England, where that's what we're
tropical
England.
Tropical England. It's a serious point. That's the way we're going, isn't it?
Right. Exactly. So global warming, right?
Yeah. I mean, just to reflect on what Abdullah was saying, this report was incredibly important, and very, very thankful that UBI, out of the year 2020, our annus horribilis for everybody, took this initiative and decided to bring the community together to organize this kind of insight. Was it's like the title, it's the triumph of innovation. It's fantastic for all of us. We all needed to see that triumph of innovation come out of the traps, and thank you, UBI, for pulling us together for that. I've had a chance to read it. I got a preview, downloaded it, and I can't tell you, it's really, really worth a look at. What Abdullah said is characterized absolutely. It's about the resilience of our community. It grew during this pandemic. Fantastic achievement of all of our incubators, university connected incubators. The other piece I'll put alongside it is it showed that during growth, during this global pandemic, the incubators chose, and our incubatees chose change and social change, environmental, social, and governance change. Incredible high rankings, 80% amongst our incubators, 70% from the corporates. This is a significant moment. That's how we have responded to the pandemic. So it makes me very proud to be part of this community. And I must say, what excites me, being incubator people, is now what do we do with this? That groundswell of activity to driving businesses that will deliver on ESG goals. What are we going to do with them? Because we always knew we were going to change the world with business, but we're going to really, really change the world. And I think we're all here today at Expo in Dubai. We're getting a glimpse of the future, not only for this country, but for the world with all the pavilions. And ESG is written through like a stick of rock. Here we are, sustainability pavilion right now. So it's a powerful study, and let's going to move with that now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you said it well. I think we're literally in the sustainability pavilion, one of them, right? One of the ESGs. I think what's also one thing that's to reflect on the panel, and maybe this comes into the next kind of wave of questions. Each of us as accelerator or incubator providers are kind of working at different parts of the value chain, should we say, right? Like some, let's say at the academic side, maybe looking at how to commercialize R&D, how to empower students and whatnot. And then we're looking at growth stage, a corporate base like myself and you. And I think what's important to realize is that I think through the study, we're looking at accelerators, incubators, and the whole ecosystem at large and how they are staying connected during this time to make sure that the startups keep growing, right? So what I think would be really, really insightful, maybe giving a teaser of what's to come in the report, maybe to ask each of you to tell us a little bit about maybe what's the biggest finding or that you, maybe if you've had a preview, has everyone had a preview already? Have you all previewed? Okay, you've previewed. Okay, so maybe what's the biggest finding that you noticed that's significant, really resonated with you? Or maybe one of the biggest learnings that you've had while reading it or during this whole process, keeping connected and making sure startups triumph. So over to our colleague from Russia first.
Yeah, I would say that one of the biggest findings is, we kind of naturally evolved into a 100% digital process. And when I was talking to colleagues from UBI, like explaining how we managed to do that, and they were telling me about the cases of other participants. And today, when Angela was giving us some numbers, I saw that we act, all of us, incubators, accelerators, we acted like startups ourselves. So whenever we encountered a problem, we pivoted. And we didn't stop. We didn't close our companies or our incubators and accelerators. We just said, hey, what do we do to stay effective? What kind of tools we start using, and how do we keep on getting these startups, involved in the program to actually have them involved even deeper. So once we've started implementing all these digital tools and enhancing the platforms and doing deeper tracking, we've noticed that the results started becoming better. Because now we've been collecting all this data, and it's all digital. We were monitoring everything that was happening. There was no more face-to-face meetings like this. Everything was online, so everything was recorded, and people started being more responsible, to their duties. Trackers, mentors, all these experts that come to the programs on the one side, and on the other side, startups started really, working harder. Let me put it that way. Looking at these opportunities that accelerators give them as maybe the last chance, to actually survive this pandemic and get maybe a large contract with this big corporation. So it actually brought the community closer together. And again, using these digital tools, it allowed us. Russia is a big country. But because of these tools, we started working with experts from, every single city and startups who couldn't participate, let's say, in a program that is based in Moscow, but they live in Vladivostok, which is another side of the country. Now it was all possible, and it was accepted by everybody involved. So I would say that was the biggest finding, that it's not only us who changed and who shifted and pivoted, and it was more effective, but other players around the world actually did the same. And looking at the numbers from the study, I would say, we've converted the problem into a solution.
And absolutely, I think that's all of us in some shape or form had to do huge digital transformations, like to connect with our ecosystem and to support our startups. And I think in terms of one of the key points I heard from what you said is, record number of engagements. Like our organization, we, for the first time last year, exceeded 2,000 startups accelerated in a year. We never had that. It's because there is, people are, the number of deal flows that can happen, the number of connections people still want to make, they can still do it virtually, So I think that transition is really critical. I'd love to hear from you, Marika, on the, from the academic side and the, the work that you do in Finland. What was some of the, let's say, biggest lessons you learned in your sort of digital shift and transformation during this time to keep up the success and support for your talent and the startups you work with?
Thank you for the question. So yeah, in Aalto University, we were in a very good shape because we started the digitalization already before the pandemic. So it was one of the core areas. Also, we stated our new strategy, and the focus there is in sustainability. So there were already work that we done before the pandemic time. And now when the survey came, it was very nice to see and investigate further about the results, what has been done there in other places, and what kind of things we can adopt and learn ourselves to accelerate our own things there. What we found challenging during the pandemic time, the digitalization world, was the community building, actually, that I very much wanted to pay attention on that one. Even we got new projects, so in that sense the world got smaller, so everybody understood what is going on. I mean, in that sense that the pandemic hit all over the world so hard, so we didn't need to explain why we are not traveling, why we are not meeting face to face, but also the need of the community support and this kind of human touch. Yeah. After being there in the virtual environment a year and a half or so, it's very challenging for the persons and for the entrepreneurs and so on. So how we can together now, looking in the future, support each other on that need.
That is the big billion-dollar question. It's how do you get that intangible community feeling even in these times? It's like, it's really, well, the answer is maybe the metaverse. Maybe Facebook has it all. But no, that's a huge point. And I think all of us, either we have children or kids that are going through in schools or whatnot, that it's like they lost something that by not having that there, right?
Yeah, that's true. And of course, in university, when the new students are starting their academic journey, so of course we are putting their needs first. So even there was of course not during the lockdown, but right after, giving them the possibility to meet and be there on the campus area. Yeah. To avoid the fact that they will isolate themselves, and there will be very, very hard times for them. So especially pointing out the young people who are living the best time of their life and having the studies and all of the social connections, and then being there.
Absolutely.
Zoom party is not as fun, right?
Not as fun, yes.
There was apps that were in and out. There was these hangout things, and then they fizzled away. I mean, there was just so many of these apps for hanging out. God knows what happened to them. Anyway, but I think in light of some of that really insightful points, is hopefully the study is we can learn actually a lot of maybe some ideas how to keep that community spirit. So Abdullah, if I can ask from yourself, so maybe touch on some of your biggest learnings, or big transformative goods, the bads, the uglies that's been happening for you, transforming your accelerator in this time.
Look, I think everything that the panelists obviously spoke about, I think we've all seen a lot of resemblance to it within DMZ in Toronto, and I'm sure Simon can relate to a lot of this as well. The big thing, one of the big aha moments that we had early on was the fact that space was not effectively the core of programming, or the need to kind of build a proper program and have people kind of come together. And we always talked about the fact that space changes behavior, and I still believe it does. But you had to think about virtual spaces now differently than you were thinking about physical spaces. So you had to kind of build differently for communities. You had to really think about how do you kind of make sure that people are still integrating, talking, collaborating, working together in a way that you were never used to. Nobody's been trained on this in one way, shape, or form. It was something that you kind of got thrown into the deep end, and you had to kind of figure it out. So I think one of the biggest learnings that we had to adapt to quickly, like everybody else, so this is not unique to anyone, but is how to kind of build and kind of start looking at the virtual international kind of community as well, and understanding how to apply yourself so that you can effectively build better. And for us, one of the big transformations that we had was the fact that we were able to engage more people internationally. So our cohorts went from the need to have people come into the DMZ, physically be there, live there, work there, and everything else, to now all of a sudden, we were recruiting from companies across the country, but even more importantly, across the world. And it created this unique global mindset for people to say, I once couldn't apply to the DMZ because it was maybe difficult to come to Canada or be there or whatever it is. Now all of a sudden I can actually be living in the US, or I can actually be in the UK, or I can be in Ukraine, and I can still actually apply to the DMZ. And that really changed our unique value proposition as well. So we shifted all of our programming virtually. Up until now, we've kind of now shifted effectively forever a hybrid model where we're going to have virtual and in-person programming to support companies and kind of getting them to where they need to get to. The other part I would say, and so that's the big one, I would say, and again, it's not huge, but it's been really unique in terms of allowing us, to kind of build our operations. And DMZ's actually opened up 3 international offices in the duration of the pandemic. And one of them, one in Japan, one in Bermuda, and then one in the Caribbean islands. So it's just kind of really interesting to see, that opportunity. The second piece, and I think pre-COVID, maybe some time ago, there was always that sound bite that you'd hear from either corporates or startups when they say, startups would say, well, we're here to actually disrupt this community and we want to take over from like the big banks. And then, as a leader of an incubator program, I look back and I say, well, look, there's always room to disrupt it. In some cases, you're not going to destroy an entire FI industry in Canada. How do you actually build to kind of work alongside some of these big corporations to support their endeavors and what they're trying to build for? On the other hand, you had corporates that were saying, we're not as intrigued in working with startups because maybe the risk or the appetite or just the kind of, again, it just didn't make sense, and we can do these things in-house or whatever it may be. And I think that dynamic has changed over time, but it actually was, it exaggerated so much during the pandemic. Everybody realized that they had to work closer together to find ways to solve for. And one of the big things now that you're seeing, even, let's double click on the EDI piece. 40% of corporates are looking to startups to help them on their EDI initiatives and strategies. It's a big deal, and that kind of, now you're talking about problem sets that went from like, I can build, but I might not have as much customers or POCs to kind of leverage. All of a sudden, you've kind of expanded your horizon here to say, there's a massive problem sets. People are looking for solutions. How can we build for this thing? Because the amount of corporates that want to engage is substantially more. So, if I can leave it with maybe just a bit, call it a tagline. What I learned from the study itself as the biggest takeaway, I think everyone is coming together now effectively to put more deposits and less withdrawals. People want to give more. People want to work closer together. They want to be more of a unit as opposed to just working as an independent kind of, call it, leader. So it's interesting to see the amount of deposits being done compared to just the withdrawals happening. Which is I'd say is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very true. And if any of your international programs now want mentors from the UAE, from Jan 1st, we're going to be having Mondays to Fridays. So, that was always a big issue for us. Like here, having programs in the Middle East, we had these issues where our American mentors would be like, I can't do a phone call on a Sunday. But I think it is a really good point that like the programs now are becoming, much more able to leverage even wider ecosystem, because we all know startups need markets to scale, right? And they need a lot of international expertise for that scaling, and it's a lot of localized knowledge. So I think with the new norm, especially here in the Middle East, a lot of businesses on the corporate startup side or the government startup side, a lot of the meetings would not be taken unless it was face-to-face. There's protocols. But now the protocol is Cisco or Zoom or whatever. So a lot of things have changed. Actually, interesting about protocol. The UK has plenty of that. The Royal Protocol, should we say, to set the standard of that.
What a clunky link there. Thank you kindly, my good sir.
Absolutely. So if I could hear about, let's say, some of your experiences in the UK, because the UK is obviously Canada, Singapore. These are, among the most mature incubator and accelerator ecosystems in the world. I'd love to hear a bit from your local insight and even from your organization as an award-winning incubator. Maybe some of the biggest learnings you've had through the study, through your work, through this crazy transition.
I mean, we could talk about Set Squared, the UK, a lot, and myself, my colleague Karen Brooks, who's the programs director at Set Squared, we're around and we could do that. But I really want to talk about this Triumph of Innovation study, because it was very important. That came at a very important time. The big takeaway I got from it, one of them, was that our community continued to produce deal flow and continued to raise investment. We were not distracted by this. Now, do you remember back in March in 2020, I was there, sat at my desk, and there was these emergency webinars being called. Silicon Valley Bank was involved in this. What's going to happen to venture capital with this lockdown? And there were all of these charts, just numbers and lines. And the prediction was that all VC was just going to focus its cash on its portfolio companies. There would be no new deal flow. baloney. Look what we did. We did. Because of everything that we've talked about on this panel, the borders were shutting down. Our community was collaborating more than ever. And this is what we've proven in the, under fire we can do. I do think that success is, there is a hardcore link to the high ranking of ESG as a criteria that the study shows in Angela's slides there as a high priority for incubatees and for the corporate partners. There's another movement going on in the world, and brought very much to public attention by the guy they call the father or the godfather of British venture capital, Ronnie Cohen. He says that impact investing, so investing in businesses that have ESG written into their business plan, is now a $40 trillion business. In fact, half of the world's professionally managed money is for ESG investments, for impact investments. So, our smart incubators, our communities aligning to that pull. Just to talk about success, I think a number, and I think this is shared across the community. We do a data capture of the money that's been raised by our companies. In 2020, calendar year 2020, that was £630 million by our wonderful companies. We do a second data grab, which is for our universities. They have a funny year. They run from summer to summer, so that was 20 to 21. That 12 months, it was over £1 billion, i.e. they were raising significantly more money in the height of the pandemic. That was because they were aligning to the ESG policies. Karen runs a program for our very early stage companies coming out of the research base, and she embeds ESG action plans into all of those programs. She's doing a big sprint refresh on that project. My big project this year is an investment fund for Set Square. Working with the venture capital partners there, they need an ESG action plan to make investments. So we're joining those two up, and we're shifting a lot more money into our companies. And these are companies that are going to change the world with their technology, but also with their environmental, social, and governance ethos of their businesses. And that really is a point of unification for me. I'm very, very proud that we're part of this movement.
Yeah, it's a really, really awesome trend that you mentioned, because we actually haven't talked much about the venture capital trend. And I think if I'm not mistaken, Magnet said that this was a record-breaking year in MENA. We saw over $1 billion in investment in the region, and a lot of impact investments, like purpose-driven investment, green investments. I mean, over here we're having a lot of huge targets. I think DP World is one of those organizations that has carbon neutrality by 2050. Everyone has to do it. It's not a nice to have. It's now everyone's. It has to happen. And I think that a triumph from, let's say, the shadows of the pandemic is that startups are really providing the solutions and providing really good investment opportunities. I mean,
we've all been talking in the coffee break, where because of the Saudi pavilion, we see the ambitious goals of that nation. We watch the infrastructure bills going through the States, in little old UK building back. There is unleashing of huge public funds for infrastructure for a sustainable world. This is we're very sensitive in the UK because we just hosted COP, but that's the United Nations COP. That's all of our COP26, and we're in a perilous moment. And so we governments need to shift the emphasis of our national investment into this kind of infrastructure. And it's only our communities, only the innovators, the startups and scale-ups that are going to deliver in these kind of timescales. We heard this morning, corporate's going to be too slow for this. They need what we've got, which is why we're seeing this move. And I'm so pleased. The pandemic was absolutely awful. Like many, we were in tears every night watching the death toll. But what we've come out of this is a new protocols, new ways of working, online, more collaborative, that will cut through this and allow our companies to do what.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also by when things are now virtual, let's say the best, aquaponics solution for agriculture, let's say, people are now looking broader field because of the situation now, right? You're not just sourcing companies that are in your region or your city. You really are more, you need to do it. And the virtual world is enabling people to cast their wider net for their deal flows for investment, or their corporate, let's say, pilots or commercial requirements and whatnot.
Absolutely. You've got energy efficient solution that's developed here in Dubai. I mean, it's the responsibility for that solution to be deployed commercially globally. That's
Absolutely.
Otherwise,
Otherwise,
we're
what's
not going
the
to solve
point?
climate change in one country.
Yeah,
alone.
exactly. And startups need scale. So we have, I think, about another 3 or 4 minutes. I know that the clock looks like this big, but we have a little bit of time. So I know it looks like it's like the 60-second kind of thing. So let's do off with a final sort of key punch point that you want to sort of. So everyone's read it except me. I feel terrible. But obviously the importance of this couldn't be understated. We all need to learn from each other's shared experiences, and hopefully we can integrate that into the work that we do through our accelerators, bringing our communities together. What I'd love to hear is maybe from each of you, what is the, let's say, stakeholder that, because there's corporations, there's the startups. Let's look away from the startups, because startups is the center of the equation, right? But then there are the mentors, there are the corporates, there are the government entities, and then each of us in one way are either empowering business development, investment. So I'd love to hear maybe what is the, going forward, what have maybe you've learned from this or that you're really looking forward to in the next, not post-pandemic, but the new wave of, let's say, the next 5 years, which is the sort of major stakeholder that you think is going to get more involved in the startup journey? Like, are corporates going to get more involved, venture capital, and why? That'd be great to hear.
I think there's a new player, on the block, and that player is unprofessional, private, high net worth individual. This is what I've seen for the last year and a half. We had the major growth in angel community because of what was happening with deposits, banks and everything else. All those percents went down, so people started thinking about investing their money, and not investing their money in the stock market, rather than investing their market in something different, maybe more exciting, cool projects, more risky, but that's what I've seen. I mean, we in the last year, more than 500 people joined like this angel network. It's called Angel Deck in Russia. We've raised another fund from people who never invested in venture before. They came from, industrial business.
The global rise of angels, I think.
What I've started seeing is, again, a lot of unprofessional or high net worth individuals who never invested in venture decided to put their money into this basket.
Absolutely.
And we as players in the market are actually excited about this, and we definitely will help them identify the proper opportunities and help them, invest in the right startups. But I think that's, to answer your question, who would be where would be the new source of, energy or some boost into the ecosystem? I would say these guys.
Yeah. So great. We have to be really quick because I think we have like maybe 1 or 2 minutes. So the rise of the angels, that's definitely something we've noticed as well. Maybe another from the Finnish or the European ecosystem. What are you seeing? Is it the youth is really kicking it over into overdrive? Mentors are getting more involved.
Yeah, of course, all of that.
All of that.
Yeah, and I have multiple answers for you, but I will just pick one of those. We started a new project with City of Helsinki. So I very much look forward in the future to see the city people, governmental parties, that they really understand what kind of processes should be renewed in their own work to be able to give test beds and pilot environments. And already cities in Helsinki, they are doing a lot of those things and offering, but the matchmaking there it's a challenge. So of course startups needs very much the places that they can test and do the piloting and everything like that.
Huge role that government has, yeah.
Yeah, so we are concentrating on the providing that as a matchmaker between innovative startups and cities.
Perfect. Do we have time for 2 answers, or are we over time? We're good? Okay, great. So yeah, huge role of the right. Yeah, I'm sweating over here because the time's.
I see it flashing. It's going.
Exactly. It's like what's that show? Countdown in the UK. Yeah, exactly. That's what it's like. So yeah, rise of the angels. Role of government, absolutely, for test beds, whatnot.
Yeah.
Who's your upcoming champion?
It's tough. Look, I agree with all the partners. We've also built our own angel programs. We're working closer with governments. We've established something called the Innovation Economy Council for Canada. That's actually brought every innovation leader together to kind of talk about what kind of policies and thought leadership we got to start putting out, white papers and whatnot. Maybe I'd kind of summarize it and say, I'd say purposeful partnerships. It's really, I think, however you want to define that. And these partnerships, and what I mean by purposeful, it has to be mission critical to the founder's success. As you're establishing as an incubator, accelerator, whatever kind of program, you have to be purposeful in the kind of things that you're engaging with on a partnership level, and it has to be driven back to the success of the founder. If you're a founder-first organization, that's what you always got to bring it back to. And then, and ultimately, once you start kind of doing that, as the old adage says, good results is better than long explanations, right? Just kind of hit the ground and start moving and get it done.
That's an awesome point. Like every tech company at whatever stage, there's a certain person and a connection that they need. It might be around investment. It might be. So I think it is very, very. Every startup will have their angel at their certain time, and it could be a corporate. It could be anyone, right? So I think that's a great point. And Simon, over to you on what's your rising star?
Well, there will be new players, sure, as we've heard, but I think I look forward to most is more and more incubators and university business incubators joining the ecosystem. I think what the pandemic has shown us, as we've discussed, is that the world is a little bit flatter because of it. We can connect more, which will allow incubators in places that have had difficulty engaging with the old traditional centers in the States and China to play on a more equal playing field. And that's what I look forward to most of all, is just talking to more people from around the world about our kind of thing. And that's what UBI, in my opinion, has brought to us all. It's created the framework, the permission to exist as a global community. So bring more of that on.
You want to talk in person or virtually?
Yeah, I'd take it as it comes.
Okay.
Yeah,
which one you like better? Yeah, that's awesome.
Fantastic. Well, I know we've gone a little over, so I'm going to say firstly, thank you so much for our audience and of course our esteemed panelists for all their insights. I can't wait to read it. Everyone needs to download it. And yeah, thank you so much, basically.